Hey, as you press play, where's your head at today? What shoulds and lists and musts are present to pull you out of your body? The world is full of distractions, of stimulus and triggers that send us chasing for control, securing our survival, avoiding our impending doom in all kinds of places and scenarios and relationships. Yes, it's a necessary function in our body, but one that, if we get stuck in it, disconnects us from the present moment, our emotions, and our full range of capabilities. So maybe if you want to keep going, take a second to write that stuff down. Anything that you need to remember and want to come back to, so that you can allow yourself to go beyond the thoughts of this very moment and into the sensation of being exactly where you are. Now, if doing this, you really notice that you're kind of tense, you're in a place of urgency and pressure to get answers to figure things out, grant yourself a break from taking in more information. If you are processing something that feels threatening to your system, it can be both challenging and counterproductive to push for more. If this is you, think of the movement or smell or taste or person that makes you feel the most calm and safe. Press stop and go find those things. And if you're joining On and I to explore the intricacies, highs, and challenges of being fully present, you can either proceed as you always do, or you can bring a little flashlight along, using your senses, the temperature, the breath, the tensions and relaxations of your body, and your curiosity as you listen, to look for that one thing that you feel you would enjoy putting into practice from our conversation. It's been a long while since we spoke, so I'm curious about what's a lesson that you're currently learning?
Where do I begin? I'm learning the layers that exist to being truly present and how tempting it is in really subtle ways to keep bouncing back out into planning mode and anticipation mode. And it's like every time I feel like I've tapped into, attuned to another layer of depth of presence, more is revealed to me around all these really sneaky, some subtle, some actually pretty in your face that I just never noticed before, ways that I'm actually in bracing or preparation or just in this place of I got to be ready for what's next, which of course is a reality, but there's a balance there. There's a I'm ready and I'm relaxed, and then there's a I'm ready and I'm kind of like shaken with energy and activation, bracing and holding. So that's what I've been learning a lot and seeing a lot around.
What does your practice look like around that?
A lot of it is just in the boring moments, noticing where am I?
Mm.
So the classic example for me is when I'm walking my dog and he's like taking his sweet time to sniff this tree. And he's like doing what dogs are experts at learning from trees. And he's doing his thing, but I'm like, come on, we have a lot of ground to cover. We have to get to the park and we have to get around the park and we have to. And so recognizing that, yeah, there are moments to like keep up the clip. And then there are other moments where there's nowhere to be. And what happens if I just allow myself to be there by that tree for several deep breaths? And what inevitably happens is that thoughts or feelings that I wasn't aware of that were kind of there beneath the surface start to bubble up. And so this is really the continuous thing that I find myself and I know others are trying to circumvent, is being with what's really there. And so that's the daily practice, is being with what's here.
Mm, thank you for sharing. It's so easy to be both in anticipation, but I also think in the past sometimes. Because anticipation for me also kind of carries the timeline backwards. There's this calculation based on our experiences and the stories that we carry with us, or whatever that looks like for us, if we're
Yeah.
bracing physically or if we have this storyline that we're telling ourselves, or this rush, like, come on, we need to be somewhere, that it arises like across time somehow. And I totally can relate to this struggle to just like be here. There's literally nowhere else we can be. Why do you think that's so hard for us?
Well, we're taught that you got to be efficient with your time. So I'm on this walk. I know that I'm about to start my workday. So what I should be doing in terms of what we're taught is I should be getting clear on, okay, what are my top tasks for today? Who do I have a meeting with? What do I need to think about in order to prep for that meeting? And doing that while I'm on this walk because I'm not doing anything else, that's not a good use of time. So much of it is recognizing these things that we've internalized as, this is just the way you should be. This is the way you are. And this is what I love so much about the neuroscientific lens, is we're acknowledging that it's not just a nice, pretty concept to be present and to feel the breeze on your skin, and this is something that we actually need in order to be grounded in this reality. Going back to your point of, we are prediction machines. We are anticipating based upon our past experience as a way of staying safe and staying alive. And so that's why it is a continuous play of, oh, like, there I went. What's actually here? And this is where the body comes in and connecting to what's actually here. But in order to do so, there is, I believe, a level of acceptance of, oh, like that this way that I've kind of always been for as long as I can remember, of getting ready for what's next, of solving the problem that's circulating around my head. It's not actually the only way. It's also not actually the most sustainable or the best way for my well-being or for the well-being of anyone around me.
As you're talking, I'm also reminded it's a pretty big paradox. When we talk about being present, it's also often as simple as being aware of our patterns of anticipation. It's not always that we can remove them or soothe them, or it might also be that presence actually looks like there being that inner movement or inner bracing or inner contraction, and there being another part of us that's able to be in observation of that without judgment.
Yeah. And I would take it a step beyond observation to being in conversation with it, moving
Yes.
with it, dancing with it, and not being so afraid of it like we're trained to be in personal growth industry land. You got to fix that. You got to get rid of that. You got to move past that. But actually, that is the medicine. That is what actually teaches us. That is what brings us deeper into ourselves and more powerfully out into the world. But we have to actually be in that conversation, as opposed to saying, oh, that communication, that form of emotion, not for me. I'm going to go on to something else.
I think that there's a lot of talk around being so regulated, and a teacher of mine framed it as, you need your nervous system to be flexible, not necessarily always regulate, because that's a massive expectation to have on yourself as a human being in this world.
Yeah.
So for me, at least, I think how I interpreted her saying that was very much similar to what you were saying around dancing with it. being an acknowledgement of it, even welcoming it when you see it, but not demonizing it as in,
Mm.
"Ooh, I'm so far off," or "This isn't enough," or "This isn't good," because that also tends to be quite destructive, I think, for our ability to be present.
Yeah, exactly. The goal isn't some continuous state of regulation where we're always calm. This is why I like to talk a lot about the goal is not, if we're focusing so much on being calm all the time, we are inevitably going to end up bypassing what's actually there. Where if we recognize that being a human being, when you're alive, after you're alive, flatline. When you're alive, very much a rise and fall, crest and trough. This is like, this is why I like to bring it back to, even though I'm definitely not a good surfer, I bring it back to surfing because if a wave comes, you're not going to say, I'm going to ignore this and not like ride the energy of this wave because I don't like the when it's shaped like this. And that's what we're constantly doing. And we're wondering why, when we brace and rigidify around that energy of the wave that's moving through us, why we end up with our shoulders at our ears and why we end up with a headache and reactive towards somebody we care about. And this is going back to that acceptance. It's like, it's a very tangible thing. It's not like this, really esoteric idea. It's more of recognizing down to the biological, the cellular level, everything is movement.
Mm.
There is constant movement happening across the cellular membrane. There's blood is pumping through your body, air is moving through your body. The synovial fluid is circulating around your joints only if you move your joints. And the electrochemical signals through the nervous system. So this is something that we've just learned in our quest for control over the natural is we've learned, how do I control the outcome of how I'm showing up so that it's just right for this outcome that I'm working toward, and have developed this whole game around manipulation rather than just engaging with the conversation that's here.
Mm. I love that you brought up control because as you were talking, it was really emerging for me too how much of an exercise it is to let go of control in those moments or whatever instincts, predictions, stories, whatever else is running inside of us to attempt to narrate the future or the present to our
Mhm.
benefit, to our survival. And I think it's such an interesting thing because I feel like it's this balancing act between control and empowerment somehow. I don't know if empowerment is the right word, but I think we often think about it as, well, when I let go of control and I will have none. Like it will be chaos.
Yep.
And my experience has been that when you actually lean into having that dialogue, it doesn't feel like a lack of control. It actually feels like there is more force and there is more energy and you are more grounded and on your 2 feet, even when you're impatient, even when you're worried, even when you're scared, even when it's all those things. And so I wonder if it's the false dichotomy also that we're telling ourselves that, oh, but this will make me lose control, or this, we carry so much of that, I think, in that efficiency narrative of this has to be right and this has to be this. And I don't know what your experience is working with other people, but for me, I definitely feel like what I see with myself and what I see with others is it's we've made it up. We've made it up that we lack control when we stop narrating, but we just don't know it. We haven't allowed ourselves to experience it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes back to the cultural expectation that we've got everything planned out and the association between executing on that plan as it was set and not deviating from it.
Mm.
And I think this is so much going to my days of organizational change within companies. This is so much of what gets in the way is people become attached to the plan. And when new information comes up, we have a really hard time adapting that plan. And this is very much rooted in what we're talking about at the individual level of, oh, but then I haven't worked out the downstream, like what's going to happen after that. And I think one of the central questions behind that resistance beyond our cultural conditioning is, will I be able to handle that? Will I be able to handle what comes next? And this goes back to how the nervous system functions, which is, will I be able to stay safe, to survive? What happens next? And what we optimize for is what's going to increase the likelihood of my survival based upon what I know and have experienced before. And this is the classic thing that we understand around why do we stay in situations that are objectively harmful from the outside when we could make a decision to remove ourselves or to change the circumstances. And it's because it's familiar. It's the classic idea of it's the devil you know.
Yeah.
And that is how our nervous system is optimized. And so much of this comes back to being in that practice of, in small ways. This is something I try to bring up over and over again with my students in our courses around the temptation to go to the 8, 9 out of 10 of intensity situations in our lives and go and fix those and change those. Where what we really need to be doing is showing our nervous system at those 3, 4 out of 10 situations, I can make a small behavioral shift here. I can make a different choice here. And look, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
I'm still fine. I'm still safe. I still have what I need. And that is the continuous practice that opens something new up and is not sexy on Instagram.
No, not
It's
in
hard to
life
show
either.
that on a reel.
Yeah.
Huge emotional release, huge transformation on a big infographic. That's what's sexy.
Yeah, of course it is. But I love what you're saying. I've tended to call it choosing things that are a stretch but not a threat. And allowing ourselves the opportunities and the moments to create those new experiences for ourselves where we can like go into this unknown territory without sending ourselves back 10 steps. As you're saying, like, okay, so we don't start in the biggest crises. Maybe we start in the conversation that I'm having with a friend tomorrow, or the email that I'm writing to someone that kind of feels challenging, but I feel like it's going to be okay, but I feel a little bit weird doing it this way. Or, we often don't look for those things. I've found that both with myself and with others that we look for such big chances to change the thing. Well, don't start over there. Like, of course, your nervous system is going to go into complete disarray if you do that.
Yeah. It's the romantic comedy approach to personal growth. Everything's a big gesture. Everything's a meet cute at an airport before they miss the flight. And I think the boring aspect of personal growth is so overlooked and is the most powerful. It's what you're doing. And same thing with our impact in the world. And everyone wants to be the next whatever or make the next thing. I deeply believe that the biggest impact we can make is by tending to what can be done now.
Yeah.
And how I can show up now. It doesn't mean you don't need a plan or a goal or whatever. But in each moment, recognizing, how am I showing up to this relationship?
Yeah.
And letting that serve as the medicine and guide us. Because that is what, emotions really are is it's guidance. It's pointing us in different directions. It's showing us what is averse and what are we avoiding and what are we attaching ourselves to? What are we approaching? And that communication doesn't filter through without the space.
Yeah, I love that. I want to come back to that, like emotion as a compass, but I also just wanted to offer up one of those boring examples. I always gather lots of examples from parenting, obviously, because it's part of my day-to-day life. And I think, especially being a parent to smaller children, you're constantly confronted with your own dysregulation. It's part of that relationship. They are, testing boundaries. And often my question isn't how am I perfect mom? It's can I respond patiently and calmly to like one more thing, and then one more thing, and then one more thing. And it's not always possible. I'm the first one to raise my hands to say, hey, there are moments when somebody will push your buttons enough and you will feel like you're 6 years old, and your only choice might be to step out of the room and go breathe and ask for somebody else to step in. And it's not only in parenting. I think that's true in a lot of places in our lives that sometimes we're so thrust into something and it might be that the best choice is to step away, but it's as you say, it's kind of ugly, it's kind of boring. It isn't a big billboard moment, or like it isn't in the big gestures, it's in those what's for dinner for the 20th time, and I don't want to brush my teeth, and whatever it
Yeah.
is that comes up as your boring things, that's your practice ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
That's
to
where it happens.
Exactly. I like to joke about the kind of existential questioning that happens in the 27th status meeting for the same project, where you kind of like look around and everyone's just, in that place of what are we really still going around this issue, and what am I doing and where am I and who am I? And yeah, it's in those moments, just like in those difficult, in those challenging parenting moments, can I actually be here with what's here and see, all right, how much room is there for a stretch? How much more fully can I be here in this moment? And when do I need a break? But I think there's also something really important around this where there's this obsession with things being, or expectation that things will be clean, that things will always be clean, and that if you're doing it right, things will be smooth in your interactions. And part of developing, part of core 2 development is tearing, just like with our muscles when we're building muscle. Part of development is we go and do something and it's like, oh, that didn't feel right. Or we go and do something and we're playing a sport and we hit somebody there unintentionally and we hurt them. We then repair. And this is something we're really lacking in most spaces that I see related to development, is the ability to have somebody. I'm first to admit there are moments still where I'll say something with a tone I didn't mean, and deliver a message in a way that is not zen and regulated and perfect, somatic coachy. And what we need to do in those moments is repair. I need to know how to, okay, come back to center and let's build from here, the recovery phase. And that is something that is sorely missing. And what ends up happening is a lot of people taking their stuff into their own private environments and not practicing the relational component to the growth. And then it never gets integrated. And we wonder why we can't, when the rubber meets the road and the stress level rises, which is inevitably alongside other human beings, we can't apply the skills that we think we have ownership of.
I love that. I I keep drawing on my kids for like neurological examples, because even last week
I had a conversation with my daughter. She's 7. She goes to swim class. And this year it's a little bit more technical, and the teacher is giving her a little bit more instruction, which is not always received great, and sometimes yes. And we ended up having this really interesting conversation about how else do you know what you're even doing right? If she would have just dove off and done it perfectly the first time, and really without any consciousness and awareness as to why this is working out for her, and got no pointers, she probably would actually be less likely to be able to reproduce the same result because she has no idea what she was doing and where she was meeting her own constraints or how she was holding herself in that. And so I love what you're saying, because I also think it plays that role in us kind of bouncing against things, whether there's breakage or tearing or something not working out or however we want to call it. It's also this opportunity to interact again with what isn't working out. Why isn't it working out? What do I want to choose to do instead? And then I think for me, that's just an offering of awareness into the next thing, which we so underestimate in that moment, where it's like, wow, this is really valuable information, which I couldn't have gotten if I didn't tear or break or try or stretch. It's impossible.
Yes. That's such a great example. And the underestimated need in order to be able, or ability in order to be able to actually integrate that awareness, is the capacity to feel the associated sensations that come along with it. And that's the part that most of us don't learn to do, or actually learn to avoid. And this is where we keep repeating the same things, coming into the same relational patterns, because that movement has to happen within the body and mind. And if we're not letting that emotional material move, which is through sensation, through the signals that are happening through the nervous system, we are not getting the full message. And this is the difference between understanding something intellectually. Okay, this is where I need to place my feet on the board. This is the way I need to bend my knees, versus actually embodying it is feeling your feet on the board, feeling the way when you hold your knees in different ways, it changes the relationship of your hip hinge and of your head, and being in that fuller degree of presence with what's happening within you. Noticing, oh, when I breathe in a certain way on the knee bend, and then on a different way as I extend, it has a different effect.
Yeah.
But this is the equivalent of what we keep missing in our more intellectual personal growth endeavors, that there is an entire physiological component to cognition and emotion.
Immediately, I'm also thinking how much we're, I think, in the current climate, and I guess for some people that still feels like a new thing, where there's a lot of dialogue around labeling our emotions, which is great.
Acknowledging they exist is a good start.
Yeah, it's a great start, but I think we often stop at that. I love your description here of like coming into your body and your feet, but how do you move from that place of really intellectualizing emotion into actually experiencing emotion? This is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah. And this is the distinction of what I think many people are coming into this in a great way, coming into this awareness of, oh, the body and the brain are in relationship, and there's a conversation going on there, and that's important to bring into the fold. But it ends up being an exercise in, I'm going to observe what's going on down there in the body, keep this nice healthy distance so that I don't have to really feel it too much, as opposed to directly experiencing what's there. And I think one of the major kind of roots of this is a question that I've shared with you multiple times that is one of my favorite questions within coaching practice, which is, where am I coming from?
Mm.
Am I coming from, meaning, am I coming into this with the intention of assessing and evaluating what's going on in there so that I know what to do so that I can get rid of that and so that I can move on? Fixing, which is what most of us learn to do. Or am I coming into it with the intention from this place of, I want to hear you. I want to be curious about what's here. I want to feel it from different angles. I want to notice, oh, like around that sensation is kind of like dullness and numbness. Let me give that some space.
Mm.
Let me give that some room to move. And very much going back to the classic spiritual texts of many traditions, letting go of the fruits of that work, letting go of where is this going to take me, and focusing more on, let me just be as fully here for this deeper inner experience and teach my nervous system that it's actually safe to turn toward sensation and to make room for it to move. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable. And that stretch, I got to really use my breath to be in that stretch. I also have to notice and be attentive to, when am I pushing too much? Let me back
Mm.
off. Because if I do push too much, the nervous system locks up and is like, whoop, we're not letting that muscle move anymore. We're not letting that emotion move anymore. Dissociation.
Yeah.
And that's the exercise.
Mm.
And we're just really doing that over and over and over again and teaching ourselves, oh yeah, I can do this. And what used to be an 8 out of 10 on the scale, today is really like a 3 or a 4. No biggie. I take one breath, I feel the sensation, and I move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Still, what's left in me is something you said at the very beginning of this topic was also just this space of being and not fixing, of existing rather than improving all of the time. I've found also that it can be quite comforting sometimes, which might sound really counterintuitive, to stop attaching so much purpose and meaning to each thing that you're experiencing in your emotions. Like, we're so obsessed with each thing giving us a lesson.
What does this mean?
What does this mean? Yeah. Well, maybe nothing. Like, maybe it's just, as Rumi says in his poem, this being human is a guest house. Maybe it's just passing through and it was there and it needed to be felt, and that's it. That's all.
Maybe your interpretation is made up.
Quite probably. Which is also a weird kind of relief, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's something about that of reducing the meaning making and the judgment and just lending ourselves to sensing it.
Mm.
And it can be a few seconds. For me personally, it's often I go on walks in the morning and there will be a point where I'm like, "Whew," something comes up and through. And sometimes I like sit down somewhere close to the sea and there are like 2 minutes of tears, or all of a sudden I feel this rush of joy. I have no idea where it's coming from, where it's going, why it's there, nothing. It just, poof, it like comes through like a wave, and that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't go any further than that.
Yeah. And this connects back to the notion of having a plan and knowing what's coming next, where we're really just accepting the fact that this thing might come through. I don't know where it came from, why it's moving through. And then I just continue moving on. As opposed to, oh, okay, this might be really important. I might need to do something about this. And the way we approach that and help that shift is just the same meta practice over again, which is, oh, okay, let me notice that I experience it in my body as this forward kind of jolt of, what do I need to do about this? How do I handle this? What do I need to understand about this? And recognizing that experience. like that experience around the quote unquote emotion that you were feeling of, grab onto it. What do? I got to label this. Okay, this is sadness. This is grief. Okay, this must be happening because I heard that story about that other thing and that was sad. And so that means I have to go and do this. That impetus to understand what's going on, to make meaning of it. It is natural. This is the world we live in, is what is my interpretation of what's going on and what do I need to do about it? And let me go do that because that's what makes me a valuable human being, is that I'm going and doing things about the things that are happening. And that is so normal. That is so natural for how the nervous system has learned to ensure safety. Whoa, there's this signal. I got to do something.
Yeah.
What we are teaching our body and returning to is the reality that these signals are coming through constantly, all the time. And instead of either latching on, trying to understand personal growth mode, avoiding, disconnecting from it, corporate numbing, whatever we want to call that mode, we can just open up that channel at the risk of spiritual speak and let that stuff move and learn how to be in that conversation where we're walking on the street, we say hello to a neighbor and we keep walking.
Mm. Well, I mean, you can have as much spiritual speak as you want here, but all is welcome.
I'm careful about sounding like, oh, you just open up the channel. We have to build that capacity over time. I really have to remind myself of this kind of caveat that we need, because so much of the messaging, just follow this method, just do this thing. After this retreat, you'll be healed. Neuroplasticity does not function that way. I'm really sorry to burst the bubble, but we need gradual experience over time. However, the bright side is we now understand that neuroplasticity lasts a lifetime. We used to think, oh, by your mid-20s, that's it. You are who you are. There's no hope for you. So now we understand better. So at least there's that.
At least there's that. This is what was showing up for me as you were talking about this. We really, at least in the Western world, in the parts of the world that we are from and that we live in, and we're really taught to steer from our mind. And we're not in particularly deep ways taught to relate to our body, other than possibly how we eat and exercise. And more now with trackables and wearables, but not even always, I'd say. It can also tip over to the other side. So I guess what I'm curious about is also, how do we start building that connection to our body, not from a place of, again, like data obsession or control or whatever, because you can easily just go at it from that place too. Just say, I'm just going to track all my hours of sleep and have all the data points for this. And it's just another flavor of control if you're not paying attention. It can serve you. So I'm really not beating down on it from that point of view, but I also think everything depends on what intention you bring to it. And you can really learn a lot by counting your macros when you eat, but you can also get really obsessed with what you eat. And I'd love to like unpick that a bit more. What does that look like? Like, how do you start up your relationship past your neck and inwards?
Yeah. We get curious about all the different inputs that we're giving our body all the time. And you could say this connects back to really the intention of the mindfulness movement, of just being attentive to, okay, I put this piece of food in my mouth. Not only what do I taste, but what do I sense throughout my body? How do I actually know whether, do I like this taste? How do I know I like this taste? I don't like this. How do I know I don't like that? Because you're feeling something. Your body is interpreting whether or not this thing is right for you based upon current conditions and past experiences. So when we recognize that everything we're doing is a form of input into the body and nervous system, the conversation we're having, the temperature of the room we're in, whether we're more full and satiated or hungry, all of these things are part of the continuous neural firing conversation that's happening all the time. It's just about tuning into it, like turning the radio dial off of static and getting the signal that's coming from the body all the time and just bringing that curiosity to it. In this conversation with you right now, drinking my warm tea, I could go into, I must be nervous because my temperature is rising and I really need to like take a breath and I need to calm down and I need to focus and or I can feel the heat in my belly rising up, feel the kind of like beads of sweat pooling as I take too many sips too fast, and let that communication move through the body. Not need to necessarily do anything about it other than maybe like wipe my brow. But my heart, when I feel my heart rate, my heart's actually pretty calm. When I check in with my respiration rate, actually, we're pretty relaxed right now.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find it sounds simple and then it's still this kind of layered experience of deepening that relationship. And as you're saying, being able to distinguish between the heat and your heart and your breath. And at first, it might not look that nuanced.
Right. That's a great point.
At first, it might just be one channel you're tuning into, and then more and more. I had a few experiences this year where I could really clearly sense that my awareness was having one experience and my nervous system was having another experience. And my nervous system was operating based on very old expectations and fears, whereas my awareness and my kind of tuned in view to this was like, oh, okay, this is cool, but my nervous system was not thinking it was cool. But that's where the dialogue was, right? Then I got to kind of step aside and go, oh, okay, I see this. I get to make choices to accommodate whatever's happening with my system, not necessarily to like leave or whatever it was that was happening, but rather, okay, something isn't safe for me here, or something is stressing me out, which I can actually mentally and spiritually handle, but my system is really tying itself into knots. But I didn't start there. Like, now I got this nuance and I can really tell these pieces apart, and I can, as you say, I could like tell the hearts from the lungs, from the digestion, from other things. But it didn't start there. At first, it just I'm saying this within situation marks, it was just the awareness that, ooh, something isn't feeling right.
Yeah.
And then a choice about that. And slowly but surely, I could be the observer of those patterns rather than someone who kind of felt almost taken by the wave.
Yes. Yeah. Just being twirled around and spun around by the wave. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a really important point that you're bringing up, because what I found through this work is that the vast majority of us have what I would call an underdeveloped degree of interoceptive awareness, and interoception being our ability to sense on the inside of the body. This is the same mechanism by which we know when we're thirsty or hungry, is through the body's communication. Hey, I need some food. Hey, I need some water. This is the function of the nervous system that we're using to detect what is happening in my body. Where do I feel warm within the body? Where do I feel cool? And so for many of us, when we're starting out, I like to think of it like we're at a standard definition TV from the 90s. If any of us were to go walk by some kind of, I don't know, pawn shop or whatever, and see one of the few remaining functioning TVs from that time, it would be shocking how we ever could watch anything on it. You can barely make out the image. It's so fuzzy. Whereas now we're on Ultra HD. Everything is so crisp. You can see when you're watching a football match, you can see the player's tattoo on their skin. It is an incredible level of vivid detail. And that is the progression that we're making. Because really it's our nature to relate to the world in Ultra HD. What we've done is learned by moving away from the signals of the body, and we can talk about many ways in which that happens as we move through this world, is we've reached a point where now just the classic thing with the nervous system, as we all know, is you don't use it, you lose it. You do use it, you grow it. That's neuroplasticity. So we're just learning effectively through somatic work how to reconnect with that ability, develop it. And the other reality around this is that when we are one of very few, if any, in our circle doing this type of work, that can make it really challenging. And that's another place where we have to have reasonable expectations, recognizing in this form of work, which we unfortunately don't recognize in many spaces in the personal growth world and professional growth world, which is that we are relational animals. The way in which we grow, whether or not we grow and develop and actually integrate that learning, going back to an earlier point we made, is very much determined by our relationships, what's happening in our relationships, what kind of behavior and way of being is reinforced around us. There's a reason some of the biggest spiritual teachers I've met have reinforced this idea of pay attention to who you're spending time with. That is the most important thing for your spiritual development. Not to say where it's been taken in many new age spaces, I have to make this disclaimer of like, got to have boundaries and that person's low vibe and keep them out. And no. But we do want to recognize the role of relationships in our growth and in creating the safety necessary to be able to activate the neuroplasticity for change.
Yes, I love that. I read a quote a long while ago and it kind of made me chuckle, but it was something along the lines of the best thing for your nervous system is another human, and the worst thing for your nervous system is also another human. It is important, and as you say, it plays a role in how we might stretch our capacity to do something with the dialogues that we can have with people, the support that we might be able to get from them. All of those little pieces matter. Let's go on this. Let's go into this also. I know there's somatic practices is a super trendy thing to talk about, and alluded to it a little bit before that there's also this brand of somatics that's more about kind of the big releases. What does it mean to you when we talk about somatic practices? What are we choosing? What are we approaching? What are we looking for when we're leaning into that as a practice?
It's really where we began this conversation in speaking about presence. This is why I call capital P presence the meta practice, is because we're just being more completely here in every moment. And where I think somatics is taking things that is so new and exciting, and is that when we're saying to be more fully here, we're not saying understand what's here from your childhood, with you right now. We're also not saying taste every little drop of juice from the grape that you just bit into. These are important things to know. Yes, I want to honor what happened in my childhood. Maybe go back and tend to that relationship. Yeah, I wanted to practice being so mindful and so slow and aware and teaching my body how to be present to all kinds of nuanced information, of course. And what are you doing when that coworker is doing that annoying thing that really gets on your nerves again and is going to, and your mind starts spinning around, now I'm going to have to do this other work because of this. And now I have to clean up that mess. What are we doing in those moments?
What are we choosing?
Where are we? When you're walking the dog and you're like, come on, I got to get to work. When something happens that you weren't expecting.
Which happens in life.
And it throws you off course. And it's like, if only that thing didn't happen, then I would still be on track. It's this illusion.
I was just going to say on track. Like, does it even exist?
But it's something to hold on to outside of ourselves to try and obtain a sense of safety externally.
Yeah.
This is what I call that external orientation. So somatics is about shifting into basically a way of being where we're integrating the external and internal. We're being in that continuous conversation that's happening between us and our environment, what's happening within us, what's happening within our relationships, within our connections to the living world around us, as opposed to, if I can just make everything just so, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
We're kind of relaxing into the reality that I'm okay now. I might not be so okay in a moment. And I'll have to meet that.
I made like a promise to myself a couple of years back, just in being an observation of all this optimization everywhere. And I thought, the only thing I'm willing to commit to even attempt to optimize is presence. And it really has been so deeply in service of my own practice of awareness of this dialogue and dance with myself, of learning from relationships, from situations. Is it easy? Not at all. It is so difficult on some days and really breezy on others. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. I think you and I both come from worlds that don't just intellectualize, even over-intellectualize, and everything being very achievement heavy and mind heavy. And I don't know at all what this experience is for you, like leaning into the somatic practice, but for me, I feel like I'm liberating things all the time and just gaining the sense of spaciousness and freedom, which I guess isn't the first thing you experience doing it. The first thing you experience doing it might be like, all this is here. Oh my God, what am I going to do with it? And it's this practice of also really deeply being convinced that whatever I'm experiencing is okay. And it's not forever. Personally, I've really danced with that a lot in the beginning. Now it's more, coming through. But in the beginning, definitely coming from that storyline of being a good girl and having the grades and doing the right things and having the title and whatever other achievements, moving into what counts is how I'm showing up, how I'm sitting here, the quality of my listening, my ability to meet you or anyone else that I'm interacting with in a way that I feel proud of, not just in a way that checks any boxes, that I feel proud of, that brings me into play, my traits, my capabilities. It's a pretty big shift. It definitely worth it from my point of view, but but it
Yeah.
takes commitment.
Definitely not all rainbows and unicorns.
Wouldn't that be great?
It is often painful.
Mm.
There's a reason we're avoiding it.
Yeah.
The problem is that when we avoid it, we perpetuate it.
That.
So we're kicking the can down the road. Like, take a zoom out to the systems level. We're doing the same thing everywhere, kicking that can down the road.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable to relax into the reality that we see, that we sense emerging in the natural world.
Yeah.
Climate
I love
change
that point.
is rough
Mm.
to recognize.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of violence, corruption, a lot of bad things being done, and being an acknowledgement of those is not easy.
Yeah.
By any standards.
And so this is where we wind up in a world where we have
Sirens.
sirens. Sirens. I'm not distracted. Where we have the ability to just pretend things aren't happening, go into total avoidance, go into rationalization, to look at some form of violence and say, oh, instead of tapping into the nuance here, I'm just going to say that's a bad form of violence. That's a good form of violence. Those are the people who are allowed to be violent. Those are the people who are not allowed. As an example, I'm going to see a change coming down the pike in the company and say that endangers the world that I know. And so I'm going to passively fight it.
I love that the point you're making around perpetuating patterns. And I think for me, just listening to what you were saying before, also that, it's the familiar devil in a sense, that it does feel safe to perpetuate the things that we know, even when we're suffering, even when we're experiencing consequences that we don't desire in our life, on our health, in our relationships. And that question alone is a pretty rough moment in the mirror when you dare to ask yourself, how am I perpetuating this lack of presence or whatever else, the impatience, the violence that I don't want to see, where am I participating in that? It can be a pretty rough awakening, but also I think it's a very useful mirror. It's a different level of accountability, I think, because you can't in with the somatic work, with this presencing work, there's very few demands you can make on anyone else at the end of the day.
You can't explain away what's going on within you based upon what other people did. It's total ownership of what's going on inside.
Which that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. There's no hiding behind what somebody else is doing. There's very much an acknowledgement of the fact that we're in a relationship with everything going on around us throughout our lives. But when we come back to the core being presence with what's actually here within us now, I don't get to deflect what's going on, avoid what's going on just because what that person did is messed up. And that is not a level of ownership that a lot of people want to take. It threatens sense of identity. which is much of what we seem to be in this moment of people clutching on to their identity. And we see the way that prevents us from learning. It prevents us from growing. It prevents us from integrating new information because we're not living in reality.
No.
We're living in
perpetuation of our
exactly
identity stories as well.
We're playing the roles. We're doing what we think we need to be doing in order to bend the world to our will. It builds a lot of tension. I think we can do it toward positive ends, but we're just building more. It's inherently violent and rather destructive, sometimes in a way that's needed, but destructive nonetheless, to fight the reality that is entropy, that is change.
What it lit up in me is also this, again, kind of this writing of ourselves, this editing. I did a writing project with myself at the beginning of the year, and I themed it stories I've told about myself. And I just started writing out stories that I'd in one way, shape, or form associated with my personality or my sense of identity. And the whole thing was just an inquiry as to how much it actually had to do with my present reality. And it was so interesting because some stories I wrote and I was like, wow, okay, actually, this has nothing to do with me anymore. And I don't know that I ever need to even share this unless the context is extremely specific. In other places, I wrote them out and I could find a different angle. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. I could pull a different thread out of it. But I think what was interesting is also this constraint that this narration creates for us, which actually brings us to not be present, brings our constructed self to be there, not our present self, not who is actually here in the now living this life. It might have been Shani from like 15 years ago who is really excited or scared about something, but today I'm 39 and actually none of those things matter. I'm still like having that story run in my head. And it was a really interesting way for me to like highlight the stories that were happening within and find ways of honoring them without feeding this control and like direction as we like direct how you're seeing me and what I'm doing and what we're getting out of this. And definitely that movement alone played a really big role in this year in my presencing practice of just noticing. Mm-hmm. Which I guess isn't somatic work, but it definitely is some way of mirroring our patterns back to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that still matters too.
Yeah. I think what you're describing is one of the reasons somatic parts work is taking off now. And, we talk a lot about this in feeling school, this idea that these patterns that we've developed over the course of our lifetime, they arose for a reason. They weren't some random thing that happened at some point in our life that is just a bug in the system. It was these patterns arise at different points in life in order to optimize for our survival. Mm. And especially when we're very young, we develop patterns that from an adult's perspective are like, that's totally irrational. Why would you keep doing that? It obviously is not going to go in the direction you want it to. You keep doing that because that's what you learned keeps you alive. Mm. And whether you look at it at people pleasing or whatever it is, those patterns that are underneath that are not things to debate. They're not things to understand, oh, if I can pinpoint exactly where this came from, I can kind of do some surgery on the wires and disconnect this one and reconnect them over here. As animals, we need to give ourselves new experiences and refresh our nervous system's perspective around what is safe and what is not, where the threats are and where they're not. And a lot of that comes back to this really important shift you're describing, where instead of, oh, that makes no sense, get rid of that. Okay, let me let that concern be voiced. Let me let that communication be received. And then use my adult capacity to reconnect to a sense of embodied safety and take a new action.
Yeah.
And let me do that again and again. And show myself, actually, this is the aligned action in this moment. This is actually me versus me in a rigid defense.
What really like resonated out to me as you were saying this is also this again and again. Like, it is not going from a fixed state to another. It's this constant cycle of unlearning, relearning, revising, ever so slightly changing, or a lot, but incrementally. I feel like this is also something looking at even the world and how we approach things that we're much more pushed to practice is less of going from a fixed state to another and more of relying on our capability to actually be in that middle place of exploration and curiosity, which at the end of the day is kind of where we always are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how we are actually meeting the reality of the moment.
Yeah.
I recently, just to brag a little bit, I recently got my freestanding handstand. Finally, I've like opened up enough mobility in my shoulder to be able to do handstands. Can I do a handstand with one hand on a block and one hand on the ground? Definitely not. Can I do a handstand, which the way some of my friends can, where you have somebody pushing your legs and you rebalance? Definitely not. Is my handstand at all useful or functional in the world? No, not at all. All I have is a handstand on a flat surface, on an even surface, without too much of a breeze. So exactly to your point of like, what is fixed versus what is dynamic, what is functional, until, and going back to this notion of movement, until we can bring movement into what we're doing, until there's this dynamic nature to what we're doing, it's not actually functional. It's just something else we're attaching to.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a handstander. I'm in the handstand group now, guys. Look at me.
Yes.
I can barely take a breath when I'm in handstand. I have to still do the very beginner, like little shallow breaths so that I don't throw it off too much.
Yeah.
That's part of the process, but that is not by any means going to help me in any different form of movement I'm doing. And this is kind of the way we approach personal growth, is by accruing these party tricks and these things that we can list off as, oh, I've made this mindset shift. And have you thought about it that way? And what if this? And it gives us our dollies, like it feels like we're making progress. And we're basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We're still avoiding meeting reality.
Yeah.
We're just doing it in a way
Accumulating.
that is more enlightened,
Yeah.
we think.
Yes. Yes. Which is reason for being, even for this podcast. I think that leads me really nicely into a question to help us in wrapping up. We could probably talk and go on, but we can leave some for curiosity too. To that point, you don't want to collect party tricks, if you don't want to accumulate facts, if you actually want to start integrating a presencing practice, a somatic practice, we covered a lot of ground today, so I'm not sure what we're calling
It's
this.
all the
Maybe
same.
it's all the same, right? What's our invitation to somebody who's listening to this?
Take whatever it is you're feeling right now and just notice something else about it. You might notice, I notice I'm hungry. I haven't eaten yet today. How do I know I'm hungry? What else? What other quality can I notice other than this thought, oh, I'm hungry? What is a physical quality I can notice? I do feel some kind of heat building in my belly down there. There's a sensation that's associated. And just continuing to be in that practice of what else can I notice and bring that interoceptive awareness back online.
Yeah.
I call this gentle curiosity. I'm not trying to figure anything out. I'm just curious. What's happening in there?
Yeah. Is there more nuance than what I pick up on the surface?
Oh, I felt heat. Where is the heat exactly? Is it moving? Oh, kind of. It's kind of undulating a little bit. The more I actually bring my awareness to it, the more I notice about it.
Yeah.
And becoming, I joke in our feeling school work about it's just about becoming this nerd when it comes to sensation. Just like being fascinated by sensation. And the more that we point our attention toward the sensation, the more readily available that skill is. And this, because like many things in this work, there are important caveats because of where we tend to take things based upon our conditioning. And in this one, it would be, we're not hyper fixating on, okay, heat. We're not, that's why it's a gentle curiosity. It's a diffuse quality of awareness that we're practicing. And then we let it go.
Yeah.
We don't go into meaning making. And that's the very, very simple yet elementary building block practice of being able to exercise all the different things we were talking about today.
Beyond our race to be efficient, our chase for outcomes, our trying to solve life as if it were a problem, beyond all the shoulds and plans, there is a here and now, a deeply nuanced presence that can evolve us and connect us and move us if only we dare to venture into it, if only we dare to commit to welcoming it, moment after moment. I don't know what sensations are racing through your veins as this episode comes to an end, but if indeed you've been listening and there have been sparks inside and there have been new thoughts and there has been something taking root or maybe even being uprooted, send this episode to somebody else who needs it. And if you want to support more conversations about learning from trees, being creative, and expanding our interactions with life, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and give us a rating. That's how more people can join this conversation. Thank you so much for listening.